Hello and welcome to Chapter 5, Entry to Social Work Profession, Part 2. This video will probably be a little bit shorter because the main thing I want to highlight in the second part of this chapter, you will see that they are talking about the levels of professional social work practice. There's a good figure 5.1, that talks about career options and it shows these different levels. It actually also includes working just in terms of being natural helpers and volunteers. But what I want you to take note of is that there is the basic social worker, the specialized social worker, the independent social worker, and the advanced social worker. You need to know those four levels. Certainly you need to know them for the quiz, but also if you're going on and actually into the social work profession, you want to know what are the basic qualifications and descriptions of each of those levels. And it's laid out pretty clearly in the text of the book. So I'll just touch on them briefly. The way that it is laid out, they have like the basic professional, they have a description, qualifications, and characteristics. And for each of those four levels of practice, it follows that same formula. So I encourage you to take the time to go through, those three things, the description, the qualifications, and the characteristics, and to know them for each of those levels. I'm just going to hit on a few highlights here. So the very least in terms of qualifications for the basic social worker is having the bachelor's degree from a social work program that has been accredited by the Council on Social Work Education. You want to be sure that you remember that it's not just getting a bachelor's degree, from some program. The program has to be accredited, and it has to be accredited by the Council on Social Work Education. So when you're taking the quiz, be sure you read questions carefully and check for any kind of modifiers and things like that so you understand what the question is asking. So that's what you need at that level. Now, in going on from the basic social worker, you have the specialized social worker. The specialized social worker requires the master's degree. A master's degree. Now, that's the minimum. So that's at least a master's degree. And from a social work program accredited by who? You're right, the Council on Social Work Education. So now when you read a little bit more about the description and the characteristics, you'll see that the building of the knowledge base becomes more focused. There's more that is required at each one of these steps in order to reach that level. So take a look at those for sure. So a master's, someone who's a specialized professional, has the master's degree, is working at an agency, has a supervisor, is there full time, that type of thing. The next level is a little bit different. It's the independent professional. Now, that person obviously needs to have the master's degree from a social work program accredited by the Council on Social Work Education. You're right. But there's something that needs to be added in addition to that. They need to have at least 2 years experience after their master's where they're under what's called appropriate professional supervision. That's basically talking about another master levels social worker who's licensed. So for 2 years, you're working in an agency, you have that appropriate supervision. You then at that point, that's kind of the minimum again, but you then at that point qualify to work as an independent professional. Well, now, what does that mean? That means that you could work outside of an agency. If you wanted to set up a private practice where, say, over the last 2 years you developed really some very good skills and seem to have an aptitude in particular for couples counseling, you could become an independent professional. You could set up your own office and have 20, 30, 40, whatever clients. It would be basically running your own business. Or maybe you would be a consultant, or something of that nature there. It basically says that you have come to the place, at least at the minimum anyway, that you could begin to function as an independent professional. You're not checking in with your supervisor at the agency because you're no longer a part of the agency. So that's a significant step. And many social workers do become independent professionals, independent professional social workers. And then the last one, the fourth one, is the advanced professional. This is the person who has gone on to get an actual doctorate, a PhD in social work. They're doing advanced research, advanced policy work, advanced administrative work. They eventually might even come to teach at a university. They may even head up a social work program. Most of the time, I think probably almost all the time, that the directors of the schools of social work or departments, whatever it might be, have a PhD. They also might be heading up a statewide agency, a social service agency. They might be working for the government within the Department of Health and Human Services. They might even head up a national organization, the U.S. Red Cross or Salvation Army or something like that. So those are just highlights of the 4 levels of social work practice. But be sure, as always, go through, read the entire text, make your notes, add it in, keep those 4 levels distinct. What is the description? What are the qualifications? What are some of the characteristics so that you could recall those? That's about it. I did want to add one thing. You will notice that in the book, at the back, it talks about, a lot of times I think it's like in an aqua or a light blue shaded box area, there's often very good information in there, and sometimes giving examples of like a young social worker and that. None of those specific things are going to be on any of the quizzes, but to get an idea and a flavor of how this works, I encourage you to take time to read that. Now, at the very beginning of each chapter, you also have a shaded box. That does have important information. Often it's the more global or macro information. It sets the stage, and sometimes information from the very beginning in those shaded boxes at the beginning of each chapter, sometimes there is material in there that will appear on the quizzes. So don't skip over that. Be sure you do that. And remember to check out in the back of each chapter the key concepts and ideas. After reading the chapter, listening to the lectures, if you're doing that, every one of those key concepts you should know about. If you look at them and you say, what's that? I don't remember that. He didn't say anything about that. I don't remember reading about it. Go back. It's certainly in the text. I might not have touched on it, but anything within the chapter is something, that is material for the quizzes. All right. Thank you.